Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside the Investigation. I'm Andy Fox, and I walked into Wavy TV 10 back in 1986, and I am doing something I've never done before, and that is a podcast. One of the first big stories, actually the big story, the first one that I covered was a double murder out on the Colonial Parkway. The two victims, Rebecca Andowski and Kathleen Thomas, they were viciously murdered. And it became my first big story. And it became known as the Colonial Parkway murders. I want to, before we begin this show with our guest, I want to take you back and give you this overview of exactly what the Colonial Parkways are and who the victims are. Take a look. The Colonial Parkway murders, 9 murders between 1986 and 1989. 1986, Rebecca Andowski and Kathy Thomas found murdered on October 12th after being last seen on October 9th, found on the Colonial Parkway. 1987, David Knobling and Robin Edwards found murdered on September 23rd after being last seen on September 19th. Ragged Island Wildlife Management Area. 1988, Cassandra Hailey and Keith Call disappeared after a university party. Their car was found on the Colonial Parkway about a mile from the 1986 murders. Their bodies never found. In 1989, Anna Marie Phelps and Daniel Lauer disappeared, and their bodies were later found near a rest stop on I-64. And their bodies found off an old logging road. Also in 1989, Teresa Lynn Howe found murdered hours after leaving a club. We only know about Howe in the end because of her DNA connection to a suspect, Alan Wilmer Sr., identified in 2024 through DNA evidence and also linking him to the 1987 Ragged Island murders of Robin Edwards and David Knobling. That began 39 years ago, back in 1986. 37 years ago, Keith Call and Cassandra Hailey were out on their first date, and they disappeared. Their bodies never found, as you heard. Joining me are his brother and sister. This is Doug Call over here, and this is Joyce Call-Canada. You can take your headphones off now. I just wanted you to hear. That's the way we hear exactly what's going on. What did you think about that?
Good.
There he was. Thanks for joining us. There he was, in line, buying tickets for you too. When you saw that image of him, what did you think?
I love that picture. He was happy. That was his favorite group. Yep.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, he was happy. He loved you too. He looked happy at that time. I mean, it's hard to see it because, you know, it's like, you know, it's still hard to look at that stuff. I mean, I'll never get over that part of it, you know, but he did look happy at that time. And
our reporter who was there, Laura Marquez, came, and I always remember it. She goes, Andy, you know that Keith Call you're doing a story on? I think we got him in line buying tickets for you too. And there he is. Let me take you back to 1988. It was April 10th. Tell me what was going on inside the Call family when you realized that his car was found on the Colonial Parkway, keys in the ignition and running, and no Keith Call or Cassandra Hailey. What's going through the Call family?
my mom woke me up that morning. I was, you know, I don't know what time it was. It was probably mid-morning, I guess, and told me that they'd found Keith's car on the Parkway and he wasn't there. You know, they couldn't find him. And at the time, you know, I kind of blew it off. I said, well, he probably just parked it there and then just went off with somebody else, you know, because it, you know, kids are prone to do what they do, you know. I mean, you know.
But he's missing, and that's that's not normal.
That's not normal, but it could happen, you know. I mean, if he went out, he had too much to drink or something.
They were thinking
like
maybe
that.
they were down swimming in the, you know, the York River, but you didn't buy that, did you?
I mean,
or did you?
I didn't buy that part because it was too cold.
Yes,
but the part that I was thinking is maybe he would just met up with some friends. Maybe he had too much to drink, parked his car there so he was safe, and then went on his way. maybe, you know.
Did you know that Cassandra Hailey's belongings were in the car as well? Did you know that connection yet?
No, absolutely not at that.
So for you, it was just Keith alone.
It was just my mom waking me up in the morning to tell me that they found Keith's car and Keith wasn't in it. She was worried, and I tried to blow it off. Maybe it was just because I was trying to make her feel a little better. You know, I was like, no, it's probably okay. He probably just parked his car there, went out with some friends. You know, nobody wants to dream that the worst has actually happened. You know, I said, no, he probably just parked his car, you know, and went off with some friends. He'll come around. He probably drank too much. You know, he's probably still passed out somewhere. You know,
Joyce, what do you remember?
First thing I remember is
Tell me about the panic you feel.
well, I got a call. Yeah, I got a call from my mom. It was about 9:30, and she said that Keith's car was on the Parkway, and they were all getting ready to, to go down there, and so we didn't know what was going on. Totally out of character, right? And so anyway, I hung up the phone and jumped in the car and started heading over there myself. And so as I'm coming across the Coleman Bridge, I don't know, I just got a yucky feeling in my stomach. Just didn't seem right. Got there, and that's when the nightmare began. That's when we found out,
When we have a video shot of the Call family sitting on the banks of the York River, just sitting there huddled as a family. You remember that shot. Mm-hmm. And your other brother was there, and it was just terrible. We actually have a picture of the family gathered here. That you came out with his picture and just saying, hey, if you've seen anything, call us. What's going on? Tell me about when you started getting first frustrated with the FBI and the Park Service investigation into this. And I might add, before you get to that, one, I think it was your father. He had driven by his car early in the morning because he uses the Colonial Parkway to go up to Anheuser-Busch, yes, which is where he worked. And tell me about, and he's passed, but tell me how that perhaps led to his early death.
Oh,
the whole situation.
Well,
seeing it, did he have regrets that he didn't stop the car and check it out? Or?
I never saw him to have regrets about that part. I thought, he probably didn't want to dream of the worst at the time. He was probably thinking the same thing I was thinking, because, nobody wants to think that, the worst has happened. So I think he looked around. I think he was a little angry and agitated that Keith left his car there, and then he went to work.
And it was running, apparently. Running with the keys in the ignition. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that, I'm
no,
not.
I don't remember.
I was watching one of the shows and they had mentioned that.
The car was not running. It was not running.
Okay.
No.
We're going to take a break. And when I come back, I want you to be thinking about your frustration. I mean, you lived a lot of years with this, with nothing really happening. So when we come back on Inside the Investigation, we will talk with them about the frustration in the law enforcement investigation into this. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Inside the Investigation. I'm speaking with Keith Call's brother and sister. Talk to me about the frustration you have with the FBI investigation and also the Park Service investigation and the botched things that the Park Service did to contaminate the crime scene.
Well, yeah, they did contaminate the crime scene. From what I understand, they didn't call anyone else to begin with.
Not the FBI.
Not the FBI, no one. And they got into the car, and I think they had dogs in the car, and they fingerprints everywhere. So it was botched. And when the Park Service got there were clothes that had been thrown back in the car that were not there when my father looked, because he did look. And he also, years later, out of abundance of caution, he was hypnotized to make sure there was nothing in there that he didn't see. And because that was just perplexing. Why were there no clothes in that car? Keys, Sandra's boot and why was that not there? And then the stuff was thrown
Well,
back in.
because we now know,
Yeah.
and Irv Wells, who was then the agent in charge and he kind of was there at ground zero for this whole thing, said that what the Park Service did was that they took everything. They thought it was an abandoned vehicle,
Right.
so they emptied the whole car out, drove the car back to the Park Service, and then they were, hey, we have a missing person now, so they put everything back in the car and then took the car, I believe, back to the scene.
It was just botched from the very beginning.
And that is information from the FBI. And they were on, and I remember Irv Wells, many conversations with him. He has recently passed, not recently, but a couple years ago. And he always said that the Park Service was never a cooperating partner, really, that it was it was very difficult to deal with them. Anything else you want to add about the frustration?
I mean, just frustrated how the thing went down. I mean, it was awful the way they handled it to start with. They really botched the whole thing. Maybe it could have been solved very quickly if they wouldn't have done what they did.
I'm just going over my notes. Talk to me about the pain and suffering of not knowing and how this took away joy from your years.
Oh yeah. Well, it's been difficult. I mean, it's still a long ride. It's been going on 38 years, or has been 38 years of not knowing, where him or Cassandra's body is, what happened. And, as my brother has said before, and he lived at home at that time, and Doug, maybe you can elaborate more, just watching my parents. I mean, that was like double agony, not knowing what happened to your brother and searching and searching and searching, and then watching the pain.
And you've told me this took years off her life.
Oh, gosh, both of them. Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to bring up is that Keith never had, you've said before, Keith never had the opportunity to grow up. You're quoted about that.
No.
What's the regret of that?
He didn't. He was he had just turned 20 in March, and he was first year of college, and it was just all taken away. He could have offered so much. I think about nieces and nephews we could have had at family. We've had so much, so many different family events that he is not there for.
Yeah. And he's really the first one in your family to use a computer. That we have pictures somewhere of him at one of those basic computers.
Yeah, yeah. Commodore 64.
Commodore 64.
I
I
love
remember
that.
you say that.
With the cassette player for the memory. Yes.
Yeah. We also have a picture of Keith, and there's a kind of a chill picture of Keith. How is this picture characteristic of his attitude on life, the vibe, the chillness, like relaxed, uptight? Was he relaxed?
Well, now we might have different perspectives
We're gonna have
because
different
What's going on in this picture? Let's start there. What's going on in this picture?
He's just taking it easy, I guess.
Yeah.
Just getting the picture taken. I mean, for me, Keith is my older brother. He was 2 years older than me, so we were often at odds when you just like you are with your older brother. So we fought and wrestled, but I also tagged along behind him all the time, and and my parents made him take me everywhere. We were close, but we were brother close, because he was also always trying to get away from me because I was his younger brother, and
That's neat to remember that. Of course, you have an older brother, Chris.
Yes.
As well. Kathleen Thomas, Rebecca Andowski, they disappeared in October 1986. When did you start connecting the dots? Oh my gosh, this happened a mile from what happened to them 2 years ago.
well, not long after it happened, it didn't take long.
And when were you thinking, this is a
Like,
serial killer?
What is going on here? I mean, it especially, it didn't take us long to realize because of the nature of how Keith was that, like Doug was talking about, that, after a couple of hours of not hearing anything from Keith, we started knowing something's not right. Something's not right. So, it was probably within the first day or two we started thinking, now what's going on here? Because we all knew about Kathleen Thomas and Rebecca Andowski.
We've been
Small
reporting on
town,
it.
yeah.
Well, I know what one of the investigators said when he got the call that, we have this abandoned vehicle. He said, here we go again. And this will go on for years and years and years.
You don't want to think that, but it doesn't take long for that nightmare to start. And it's a nightmare.
And also want to clarify that the keys were in the car, but the car was not running, as in some of the other cases. In the report, I started talking about the connection with Alan Wilmer Sr. This finally came together because there was a DNA hit. We're going to really talk about this in our next show. But I think that I feel I owe it to the audience to say, when you heard that there had been this connection to the Colonial Parkway murders through Alan Wilmer Sr., that he is responsible, we know, through DNA match to David Knobling and Robin Edwards.
Yeah. I mean, I was just like, oh my God. He was a suspect number one from the very beginning.
Yeah, he was. I mean, because nobody ever specified, but it was always out there that there was a few suspects. Of course, the county sheriff, and then there was always a rumor about a waterman. And nobody really acted on it. Everybody was kind of always focused on Steve Blackman and Ron Little, but there was all from pretty close to the beginning, there was always like a little rumor. There was also this waterman out there that they had went to his house, and he was cleaning his truck out with bleach when they went to go
and painting it. He was actually painting it.
So it was there the whole time. But
right, and we'll talk more about that. But he also admitted to being a peeping Tom, and he also had a very interesting license plate, E.M. Raw. He was a waterman. Eat oysters raw, and so all of that was going on. But we also bring up Teresa Howe. As you notice, there are 8 real, what we consider the Colonial Parkway murders, but I always feel the need to put in Teresa Howe because it was her death, July 1st, 1989, and the DNA match from her to him that started connecting the dots to all of this. And then they tested it, and there was this test because Robin Edwards had been sodomized, and there was this DNA, and there was a hit with that. So all of a sudden, we're looking at him and Teresa Howe, and now David Knobling and Robin Edwards, and everything's starting to fall into place with the belief that most of us who have been following this for so many years, believe that it was connected.
Right.
Your thoughts real quick on that?
Yeah. I don't know. I was just anger, really, because he was there from the very beginning, and they went after him. They had him in for polygraph, and
he passed.
He passed the first one. The second one was inconclusive, and they let him go.
And we'll talk about that more in the second part of the show that's going to be coming up on our next one. But coming up next, we're going to also talk about some of the fallout from all of this and what has happened over the course of years. And we'll have that coming up right after this. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Andy Fox here with Doug and Joyce Call-Canada. And what I'd like to do now is we've taken some what we call BRoll of the industry, some video, and we want to roll in. I just want you to talk over, because, you have watched this play out on Wavy TV 10 for all of these years, and this is some of the video that you're looking at when we're doing. I mean, when you see that, what do you think? Hey, there he is.
Yeah, he's looking good.
He looks like a movie star from the 80s.
I know. He was in my car.
Yeah, there's the scene out there on the Colonial Parkway. Notice his car is no longer there because it has been moved by the Park Service, but I think they eventually bring it back. Yeah. There's the car. You can see the items inside the car. It has been staged, right? Okay, they threw everything into the back that your father did not see that, the shoes.
Right.
And some other things there.
That's in the garage. Yeah. That's in the Park Service garage. Yeah.
They moved it.
They did.
And then these are the detectives out on the scene. Remember, this was by the Park Service and also FBI. They was a joint
seen this many times. That was my dad there.
Yep.
Did you see that?
Yeah. I saw that.
Oh, no, I remember that.
Yeah. I never thought that was the case, though.
Yeah.
They had a canine follow the scent down to the water's edge. Do you think they went in the water?
No.
No, it was too cold. It was cold,
No
and
way.
windy, and stormy.
I
It
don't
was-
think they were on the Parkway.
Yeah,
they
was-
weren't even on the Parkway.
It was cold.
Joyce?
Not by
okay, you
themselves.
opened it up. Tell me about that.
They
Why
weren't
do you
on the
not think
Parkway
that?
because Keith did not frequent the Parkway, and from what I understand about Sandy,
Didn't he always drive by it? I mean, he lived
Yeah,
in
but
Gloucester.
why would she
Yeah.
lived?
I've heard that. I've heard that.
Yeah.
I just can't believe he was never been up on the
well,
mean,
he's
he'd
been
probably
on
been on
it,
the
but not
Parkway,
at 2
but-
in the morning.
No.
Yeah,
Yes, I
not
know.
at 2 in the
Gotcha.
morning.
But still, she had to be home at what time was it? 2 in
by
the morning,
2.
and she lived what 10 miles before the Parkway.
Yes.
It just
Right.
makes no sense for him to drive all the
And
way
plus-
down. To the
After he had
Parkway.
told her mom,
Yes.
I'll have her home by 11,
And plus, they weren't in it.
something like that.
They weren't intimate or
Yeah, they weren't
anything, so
really
they weren't
hitting
going
it
to go
off,
parking.
And there's got to be a better place, if he was, there's got to be a better place, in
hide.
between seeing you and her house instead of going all the way to the Parkway, then having to drive her back, then having to
drive her backtrack.
drive all the way back over the bridge.
It makes no
I mean,
sense.
it makes no sense. It doesn't. I mean,
Right, if they aren't hitting it off, then he drops her off in York County, and then
Yeah.
he gets on, and he keeps coming home, and he never goes to the Parkway.
Yeah.
Is that
Right.
what you're saying?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
exactly
it doesn't
right.
make any sense. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be plenty of other places to go instead of driving all the way out of his way to go to the Parkway to do whatever. I mean, like I say, really weren't hitting it off, and it just makes absolutely no sense. I mean,
So, where, tell me what you think.
I don't think that
They never went to the Parkway. Okay, where would they go? Were they pumping gas and someone came upon them?
I mean, it has changed through the years, what I think, but I don't think that they made it out of the parking lot of the party. I do not.
Really?
I don't. Nope.
Yeah, but wouldn't there be witnesses there? I mean, would there have to be some type of an altercation? Get
I
in the
think
car.
that
Get in the
van
car.
that was at the party had something to do with it. There was a van parked out there at that party. It's not talked about that very much. And there was and if they were on the Parkway, it wasn't of their own. They didn't go there themselves.
they had to park away on the dark side
They
street
did.
too.
They
right?
had to.
Right.
I was talking to somebody who was at that party just the other day, and she said she was at that party. She said she had to park across the street. They couldn't park. There was not enough room in that small parking lot for them to park.
Yeah,
But
and-
there was a van in that parking lot with somebody there, and he had a snake around his neck.
I had heard that a snake around his neck.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard that maybe he was in York County pumping gas and he was intercepted pumping gas.
I've
Have you
heard that, but I have heard that once or twice, but it's never been proven. And it seems like if that car would have been seen by just more than that one person.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's not true,
Yeah,
but
I mean-
it seems like there would have been more to it.
There would have to be somebody inside the gas station or something like that if they were intercepted. I mean, because you don't have unattended gas stations, right? I mean, so if somebody was intercepted at a gas station,
Yeah, video cameras.
Yeah.
Although we got to remember it's 88 a lot.
88.
It's not. I mean, you're seeing all that video. That's not high def. I mean,
No.
the high def came. That's what's
But
that?
he did have those license plates that said Keith's on it. Somebody
Keith's,
would have
yeah.
remembered, you would think, seeing
Keith's.
that car.
Keith's and the
Kate,
other, and the other one, the two license plates that stand out in this story is EM Raw.
Yeah.
And of course, that's Alan Wilmer's license plate. That was someone said, I saw something up here, and their license plate was EM Raw. And then they go to his house and they find a car that says EM Raw.
And that truck was seen on the Parkway frequently,
Yes.
even that same night.
Yeah, and coming up in our next show, we're going to talk about how he told the detectives, "Yeah, I was up on the Colonial Parkway, but I wasn't on that part of the Parkway."
Right.
But he is admitting to these things, and then in our show coming up, we're going to talk about how frustrating it was that they had him, and they let him go. Can you imagine? And we'll talk about this really in the next show. But can you imagine all those years had this been solved back in 1988?
it would have saved us, my family, so much heartache and stress. I know Keith would have been gone, but at least we would have known what happened to him, and we could have buried him or something. You know, it would have saved us. I mean, the wondering and the not knowing, it was the worst anxiety about the whole thing.
Yeah, we would have been It would have been so neat to have tied that together.
It would have been painful, but it was still, we would have known something.
Yeah. We will come back with the final word on Inside the Investigation coming up. And the final word, thanks to Doug and Joyce for coming in. It's been a fascinating discussion, and we will continue it on our next edition of Inside the Investigation.